Okay, next news story. I'm kind of excited by this one. Lenovo Legion Go. It's a really nice handheld. It's frankly huge, though. It's not particularly attractive, I don't think. But the successor, or at least potentially one successor, is has been leaked. The Lenovo Legion Go S. It looks like a much more conventional-looking handheld, and it's going to be using the Z2 architecture from AMD. And well, Oliver, you've seen the same leak that I have. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting and very cool device. So one thing I really like about this device, this new Lenovo Legion Go S, is the physical design. Those grips are
Yeah.
really something that I think you do miss on the ROG Ally and a bunch of other handhelds. In fact, I keep ordering these bizarre sets of 3D printed grips from China to try to get more of a grip on that ROG Ally device, and none of them have been to my satisfaction thus far, so perhaps this is a better route there. But I think if you're going to make a 7 or 8-inch handheld, this is rumored to have an 8-inch screen, trying to minimize that kind of height of the device is a little bit silly. You're already getting into something that's like easily purse or messenger bag territory. I don't think you need to make it, an inch less deep there on the Z-axis there. In terms of the chips that they're doing, it does look like it's a Z2 chip, but the rumor here is that it is actually a Rembrandt chip. So it's the Z2G chip, apparently. AMD is throwing a bit of a wrench here with their naming, so it sounds like the Z2G is Rembrandt, then the Z2 is the old Phoenix chip, basically, and then the Z2 Extreme is the actual new Strix Point chip. So they're basically branding functionally 3 generations of products with Zen 3, Zen 4, and Zen 5 CPU architectures there, and different versions of RDNA there, into products that are labeled within the same family. But I actually think that, if this is just a Rembrandt chip, I'd have to assume probably that there will be variants of this or another similar device with more powerful chips. But even if it is Rembrandt is still like 8 Zen 3 cores and 12 RDNA 2 CUs. So that's a pretty powerful device. It certainly has more hardware on board than the Steam Deck, which is obviously quite capable in its own sense. Would it be as power efficient as the Steam Deck? I'm not so sure, especially under Windows. But, that's pretty cool. And at least for me, I kind of look at this device and I'm like, this would be a really cool, possibly Wii U gamepad style device to pair with Bazzite and Moonlight, as I'm so off to look at here. Especially if it can do 120 hertz in the display. Even 90 hertz would be great, but 120 hertz would be fantastic. If they can do a version of this with a Z2 Extreme, that would be even better, obviously. But it looks pretty cool to me, and I like the way that it probably will fit in the hand. That's really what I'm most excited about. And here, one other thing I'm interested in, and this is such a minor detail that perhaps I'm more obsessive than the average person on this, but I am a little bit interested in this, is that on the right-hand side of that device, it looks like they have some kind of touchpad nub or something going on there, maybe like a track point, something weird there. And
Right. Okay.
that could be a good compromise here, because I think a full trackpad is kind of excessive for a lot of games you want to play on this device. Probably not many games that you want to play on a PC handheld need cursor support. But at the same time, having some kind of hardware functionality support is very important for desktop OSs and extremely important for Windows when you're navigating around. It's very awkward to use the thumbsticks as a cursor in my experience there. You can also have some utility when it comes to navigating game launchers and menus and things like that. So that could be a good middle ground. And also, as far as I recall, the Lenovo Legion Go, the original one, it did have a right-hand trackpad, but it did not have haptic feedback or a clickable trackpad. So on the Steam Deck,
Right.
you get that beautiful haptic feedback. It's actually really easy to use in games that do demand some degree of precision, like an RTS game, like an MMO game. Those games that you wouldn't normally play on a controller, they actually do give you that feedback that's so critical. And here, if you're not going to give me that feedback with a full-size trackpad, I kind of think you might as well just give me like a little nub or something to, tweak with in Windows when I need to use it, because it's not going to be that useful for any kind of real-time gameplay feedback unless you really put that level of engineering effort into it. So I think this is a really cool device potentially. If it is a 1080p, 8-inch screen, 120 hertz, with a Rembrandt chip and pretty decent battery life, I think that might be a really compelling device for a lot of people, especially if it comes in at a good price point. And personally, for me, I probably spend a little bit too much time and too much money on these kinds of devices, and I have over the past few years. But perhaps I might even be interested in picking this up if it is a really comfortable device for something like Moonlight on Bazzite, it could be a really good device.
Tom, what do you make of all this?
I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's having it all comes down to the price point it ends up at, but having a more budget orientated SKU would make a lot of sense. I mean, we're looking at what's the ROG Ally and Legion Pro are sort of under $500 at this point, right? It's kind of like around that.
Yeah, they're kind of on sale because they're outgoing products essentially.
Yeah. So there'll be a refresh there, and having a kind of a lower tier SKU sets up kind of, and looking at what is in the leak, what's missing essentially are things that are kind of omissible, if that's a word. That there's no kickstand or detachable controllers, but we keep the essentials in the screen size, which is, I think, crucial to what the experience is for what this is. So yeah, I kind of think it's worth releasing as it is, but it's also there's a lot in there which just keeps to what it makes it work best. And I think I'm very curious to see what the battery life will be on it, and the price, of course.
Yeah, the price I think is going to be crucial on this one because it's kind of got to be Steam Deck money, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest here, it is an older chip seemingly. Z2G really does look like the old 6800U, Oliver, from where I'm standing.
Yeah.
Which is like, I was reviewing that a couple of years ago. So it's got to be cheap. It's really got to be cheap. If it is a sort of rebadged 6800U, presumably it'd be on an older process, so it would not be particularly power efficient. So it would need a decent battery in there as well. So I don't really know. I think it's got to be cheap. It's got to be challenging the Steam Deck on performance terms. I'd love for there to be a SteamOS variant, going back to what we were talking about earlier. But yeah, an entry-level Windows handheld would be really good. I guess the only issue of that is I've seen some mega deals for the Asus ROG Ally, which is an excellent handheld.
Yeah.
And the discounts that are happening on the Legion Go, the existing one. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of the Legion Go because it is frankly gigantic, but it's going to be more performant than this if that's the case. If it is indeed using Z2G. So yeah, I mean, pricing is going to be crucial. I think the whole Z2 lineup, if these rumors are actually true, and it does seem to be like a growing sort of critical mass of leaks that are suggesting that they are. I mean, back for the Z1, there was the basic Z1 that was basically only in the
base model
kind of
Ally
down version.
Yeah.
And then, but it was only really the Z1 Extreme that people were interested in. Now we've got 3 different versions of Z2 seemingly, and it is essentially like a redux of the last 2 generations, and then a Strix Point version for the Extreme. So maybe AMD is going to be offering some mega deals to the OEMs for those chips based on older technology. I've looked at Strix Point. The content probably isn't up by now. It's up on early access to supporters of the DF supporter program. But Strix Point, it is by far and away the best mobile AMD processor out there. But it's not a million times better than the Z1 Extreme. It's pretty good. You can get some really nice results out of it. So again, it kind of emphasizes to me why Microsoft, Sony, and indeed Valve are kind of holding fire on their own handhelds, or in the case of Valve, their next generation successor, because and it's kind of summed up by this roadmap of Z2 products. It's kind of like gen on gen sort of iterations each time, and we're at the point now with Strix Point where, compared to the Steam Deck, it's got twice as many compute units. The clock speed is almost twice as fast, and yet you're not getting twice the performance. So, what's the issue there? Is it simply just memory bandwidth? They're still using 128-bit interfaces on all of this stuff. I think we have to go to Strix Halo, which is the Gigantor class APU that they're planning to actually get a 256-bit interface. So I'm very curious about take-up of Z2. Z2G, if it is for like, $300, $400 handhelds, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, on the one hand, I'm not too happy about mixing different chips and different architecture families, especially within one product line. That's something that I really don't like with GPUs. Certainly with CPUs, it's certainly a weird fit here with the Z2 line, but I do think the fact that they should all be pretty decent chips there with respect to performance, they should all at least be giving you a Steam Deck-like experience, I'd assume, at least at decent wattages, if not substantially better there for the higher-end chips. That indicates some level of maturity there where you'd be comfortable going in on even a Z2G device, presuming the price was right, and you'd get a reasonable experience in a lot of software, especially software from like last generation titles. You get a pretty good experience playing those games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth pointing out that even the 6800M, which is the GPU that looks likely to go into this new Lenovo device, it's still an appreciable bump up from Steam Deck. It's just not as good as the others.